back and understand that you can hear me. So if I don't have any messages from you, I'm assuming that you're hearing me well. And what we will be doing, I will stop every 20 minutes or so to read your comments and questions, and we'll respond to your question and address your comments. All right. So let's get back to our slides. So what we will be doing, we will have 10 lectures in this course and 5 seminars. So you will see, so in this schedule that I put together, you will have the schedule and refer to your schedule throughout the course. We will see how fast we will go, and probably the topics will be adjusted because we want to make sure that we cover not all the topics that are in this course, but important topics, and more importantly, that you will be able to understand the concepts. So far we have this preliminary schedule. You see that I put a midterm exam in the middle of the course. After we had 5 lectures, we will have a midterm examination, and the midterm will take place after you already have about first seminar. So we'll be able to talk about midterms. But what your course grade will be composed of 30% from the midterm grade, and your midterm will be multiple choice, true or false questions, and will probably include some short answers questions. Then 20% of the your grade comes from the course from seminar participation. I will have 1 group, and 6 other groups will be taught by another instructor. In seminars, we'll be giving you more detailed instructions on how to earn your grade in classroom participation, and half of your grade will come from the final exam. Your exam will be designed so you will be able to take them online at the same time. So also at the end of each lecture, I will put together the reflection question for you. So the reflection questions are good to make sure that you can answer those questions. And so expect similar questions to be on your exams. And then discussion topics will also be included in the presentation. Those are indications of the questions that you will be posed on your seminars, and the types of short answers that may be short answer questions that may be included in your exams. So this would be maybe a little bit challenging course for you for 2 reasons. Number one, it's sort of a lot of talking, a lot of definition, sort of a humanitarian subject. And number 2, it's in English, so unfortunately, I don't know your level of understanding. We'll know more on seminars, but at least at the lectures, I have no idea. But as I said, I will try to go slowly. And I included all the information on slide as much in more details as possible. So we'll see how this will work out. But I'm sure if you put some effort into this course, you will do well. It is, even though I said there's a lot of talk about definitions, it is an important course because as a citizen, as a consumer, you will learn a lot, and you will learn a lot what to expect from your business, from the businesses and the business environment, and you will learn what to demand from the business in today's environment. So let's start with corporate social responsibility as a concept. I suggest you keep you start repeating this word like corporate social responsibility, it have to be so kind of natural in this course, and it will help to improve your pronunciation and vocabulary. So the business has always been charged by the public, including us as consumers, with a variety of allegations by the public opinion. It's reflected in the media. Some examples of those charges are: business has little concern for the consumer. Business exploits its employees. Business doesn't care about the deteriorating social order. Has no concept of principled ethic decision-making, or it is indifferent to the problems of the environment, and so on. So issues about what responsibilities business has to society continue to be raised over and over. You can hear in the media a lot of discussion. So these claims have generated an unprecedented number of pleas for companies to be more socially responsible. So these kinds of criticism of business led to increased concern for the social environment. And out of these developments has grown this notion of corporate social responsibility. It is useful to begin with a view of what corporate social responsibility actually means. The early definitions provide useful insights into the concept of corporate social responsibility. One of the early views stated that corporate social responsibility is seriously considering the impact of the company's actions on the society. Another early definition was that social responsibility requires the individual to consider his or her acts in terms of a whole social system, and it holds the individual responsible for the effects of his or her acts anywhere in that system. When I say acts, it's behavior and activities that we are talking about. And today we can also hear the terms such as corporate citizenship, sustainability, or conscious capitalism. They are used to collectively embrace the host of concepts related to corporate social responsibility. You can also hear the words creating shared value, which is another term that has entered the public discussion, and what it refers to the companies generating economic value in a way that produces value for society. They're generating shared value.
Natalia Mikhailовna, sorry for interrupting you. We are still on the second slide.
You're still on the second slide?
Yep.
Yeah.
You mean the second slide is kind of frozen. Did you say the second slide is on your screen?
Yeah,
yep.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. Just a minute. Let's see what's happening. I don't know. I move actually smoothly. Okay. How about I'm gonna do share. Mm-hmm. How about now?
This is the first slide on the full screen.
How about now? Do you see slide 5?
Yes.
Yeah, now they're actually changing.
So when you said you were on slide 2, that's where you were. Now we're progressing. So what I told about the evolution of the definition, there's not much information on the slide, but here it is, slide 5. So just to review, we were talking about what we mean by how the concept of social responsibility, and what we hear sometimes. Sometimes we hear created shared value, and sometimes we talk about one person responsibility, and sometimes we talk about entire business responsibility. Okay, so now we are moving on to historic perspective of corporate social responsibility. Do you see this four boxes: economic, legal, social, and stakeholder model?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. So this is important historical perspective. It's not from the understanding how it has been evolved, but we will be discussing in the, further on this four-part model. So hang on with me. If you look at how this concept of business responsibility has evolved in the free market society, remember the keywords here is free market society, because this concept of corporate social responsibility came to us, to Russian market from European and American economy, because this is where it was generated. And then with the development of free market here in Russia, we accept and embrace those corporate social responsibilities to business, because this is what we want also our business to be responsible to us. And we want to apply corporate social responsibility concept to the businesses, not only Russian businesses, but also international businesses, because the business is becoming more global. So that's why we look at where it came from, to understand the pillars it stands on. So if you look at how the concept of business responsibility has evolved in those free market societies, it started, we can note that since the industrial revolutions of the 1800s, it has been fashioned after this traditional classical economic model. So the starting point, of course, was Adam Smith's concept of the invisible hand. So this classical view holds a society should best determine its needs and wants through the marketplace. In this view, the invisible hand, in quotes, of the market transforms self-interest into societal interest, somehow magically using these marketplace forces. Although the marketplace has done a fairly good job in deciding what goods and services should be produced, it had not fared quite well in ensuring that business always acted fairly and ethically. And so over the decades, society's expectation of business changed from being strictly economic in nature to including issues that had been previously at business discretion. And eventually many laws were passed to reflect these concerns and to constrain business behavior. So a legal model of this concept to business responsibility gradually emerged, from economic to legal model. And over time, increasing focus on society's expectations beyond what was legally required led to emergence of a social model, which eventually had transformed to this stakeholder model. And in the stakeholder model, sustainability has become a prominent focus of the concept of corporate responsibility. And we will talk about and developing the stakeholder model ideas further in this course together. So let's talk about adaptations of the economic model, because this is how it all started. So early on, the different variations of the classical economic model were seen in practice in at least three areas: philanthropy, community obligations, and paternalism. From historical documents, we know that business people did engage in philanthropy even during periods dominated by traditional economic view. Well, there were significant contributions to charity and other social causes. One of the early examples of this was a collaborative effort in the United States between the railroads and YMCA. Well, I'm sure you all heard about YMCA. It's about 170-year-old worldwide youth organization based in Geneva. So after the Civil War in the United States, the railroads got involved in providing a lot of community service for the areas where railroads served to support the local YMCA chapters. Yes, granted, these services economically benefited the railroads, but at the same time, they were philanthropic in nature. Then, during the later part of the 19th century and into the 20th century, appeared what's known as paternalism. One of the examples was the creation of the company towns. A company town is a place where one main business created and owned practically all stores, housing, schools, markets, recreation activities, facilities, even churches. So in this way, business took a kind of protective, paternalistic social responsibility. So now, as the economy moves into a completely different phase in the United States, those paternalistic company towns are left in the so-called Rust Belt and completely out of date now. But they used to be very active. The companies used to be very active in creating all that. And why did they do that? Well, the main motivation was to keep the government away from the corporate business. So look what we are doing. We are doing good for the society, but leave us alone. They wanted to enjoy this laissez-faire approach to the economy. Free market, laissez-faire, do as it, just leave us alone. The main motivation. Now, as a large corporation had emerged in the 19th century and in the beginning of the 20th century, a movement away from this classical economic view has begun. If we compare small firms with large firms, the small firms are powerless. They are primarily governed by the marketplace, but large corporations have a lot of power. The power is more concentrated in the corporation. So therefore, the question then of the responsibility of business to society surfaced more frequently. So if you have more power, with power comes responsibility, and more is expected from you. Well, we're talking about it, we are still in the beginning of the 20th century in the United States, and well, guess what? You all probably don't know from history, very bad, devastating thing happened in the 1930s in the United States, which was the Great Depression. So the economy transitioned from the predominantly laissez-faire economy to a mixed economy. And in the mixed economy, the government assumed a much more proactive role. And now the business was not just powerful business, but one of the constituencies that are monitored by the government. So from this time, businesses' social responsibilities grew to include other things, employee welfare like pension and insurance plans, safety, medical care, retirement programs, and so on. Did the companies do all that voluntarily? Of course not. There was a huge anti-business reaction in public resentment at that time of the Great Depression. And the emergence of the gigantic fortunes being made by late 19th century moguls such as John Rockefeller or Andrew Carnegie. So there was a lot of social activism and new government compulsion. Compulsion includes laws or regulation. Now government compels companies to do something through laws and regulations. Now the business leaders came to realize that the government had the power to intervene in the economy, and in fact was being encouraged to intervene by public opinion. So the large corporations needed a philosophy that promoted them as a force for social good. The business leaders became very active in developing progressive business ideology and in attempting to persuade everyone that, yes, we, the corporations, do have a lot of power, but we want this power to be used properly. So if you heard about Carnegie's libraries, that's an example of an early progressive business ideology. Andrew Carnegie wrote in his essay that he called Gospel of Wealth, where he said that business must pursue profits, but that business wealth should be used for the benefit of the community. Philanthropy, or corporate giving, became the most popular means of using corporate wealth for public benefits. So one of the great examples of this was Carnegie's giving his money and building more than 2,500 libraries. So the main motivation for the main motivation of the companies, large companies, to begin developing this progressive was, first of all, to make sure that public opinion begins to see them in a positive view, and try to keep governments as far as possible. So from the historical points to the evolution of description, you might wonder why spending time on reciting some of these definitions. Well, one study found 37 different definitions of corporate social responsibility. So that's why it's important that we focus on widely used definitions that will be helpful in moving through this course, and to make sure we have an understanding of what we are talking about, so that we are on the same page. So in the last half of the 20th century, the concept of corporate social responsibility gained this considerable acceptance and broadening in the meaning. During this time, the emphasis moved from a general awareness of social and moral concerns to a period in which specific issues such as corporate government, issue of product safety, issue of honesty in advertising, employee rights, environmental sustainability, issue of ethical behavior, and also global corporate social responsibility took over the center stage. So that's an issue orientation. But the more recent focus during the last couple of decades has moved to three pillars: corporate social performance, corporate citizenship, and sustainability. That's a modern view of corporate social responsibilities. So from economic to progressive to a modern view. So we will be focusing more on modern view of corporate social responsibility. So let's return to this basic question. What does corporate social responsibility really mean? So far, I've used rather a simple definition of social responsibility. I said corporate social responsibility is seriously considering the impact of the company's action on society, but that definition is kind of ambiguous. What is serious? What is considering the impact of company? One company might say they consider, and the society might say, yeah, you didn't consider it deeply. So a second definition is kind of more specific. It's actually social responsibility is the obligation of decision makers to take action which protect and improve the welfare of society as a whole, together with their own interest. So importantly, this already suggests two active aspects: protect and reprove. To protect means that avoid of the negative impact on society, and to improve the welfare implies that you should create a positive benefit to the society. but there are still several words that are perhaps vague. So the third definition is useful, but it's rather general. So nevertheless, it places social responsibilities against these economic and legal objectives of business. So the idea of social responsibility supposes that the corporation has not only economic and legal obligations, but also certain obligations to society which extend beyond economic and legal obligations. So this description does not clarify what those certain responsibilities that extend beyond are. So if we focus on the types of social responsibilities that the business has, we can identify to help us isolate them and understand the components of obligations that make up this corporate social responsibility. And I hope this little table will help you to see everything together, tied together. So the social responsibility of business encompasses economic, legal, ethical, and discretionary. We can call it philanthropic expectations that we as society have of organizations at a given point of time. And I urge you to put yourself in both sides. In a society like consumers and public or members of society, what we expect from business, and also at the same time putting yourself into the shoes of business, because you will be entering a workforce, you will be maybe having your own business, so you will be standing on both sides of this responsibility, what is expected from you and what you expect from the business. So this table places economic and legal expectations of business in the context, and it links them to more socially oriented concerns. These social concerns include ethic responsibilities and philanthropic responsibilities. So we call them discretionary because they are voluntary, whether they do it or what at any time they want. So at a basic foundational level, business has economic responsibilities, right? It may seem strange to call this economic responsibility a social responsibility, but in effect, this is what it is. First of all, free enterprise system calls for business to be an economic institution, meaning as an institution, it should have this main objective, main goal, to produce goods and services that society needs and society wants, and to sell these goods and services at a fair prices that people think represent the value of the goods and services delivered, and that provide business with profits that are sufficient to ensure business survival and growth, and also to reward businesses' investors. So while thinking about its economic responsibilities, business employs many management concepts that are directed toward financial effectiveness of company, such as you have to produce revenue, you need to pay attention to revenue, you decrease your costs, see how your investments are performing, make strategic decisions, and also other concepts that are focused on improving the long-term financial performance of your organization. And especially today, economic sustainability has become a really urgent topic because of this global hyper-competition. So the economic responsibilities are really, truly, we can count them as social responsibilities as well, and they are essential. Without them, everything else is moot, because firms simply go out of business, right? However, the economic responsibilities are not enough. They're just part of what business must do to meet society's expectations of them. Business also has legal responsibilities. We have established the ground rules, the laws and regulations under which businesses are expected to regulate. It's completely another question whether businesses are completely within the laws and regulations, whether they break the laws and regulations. We're not talking about this here. We're talking about they are expected to operate from. As a society, we expect business to operate within laws and regulations. It is business responsibility toward us as society to comply with these laws. It is not an accident that compliance officers now have a very important role on company organizations charts. We have a master's program in compliance here at the High School of Economics and the School of Law, and has a very high demand because companies require people, specialists with compliance. So the legal responsibilities are also essential. Yet they do not capture the full range of standards and practices that are expected of business by the society. They are on its own, laws and regulations inadequate for at least 3 reasons. Well, first, the law cannot possibly address all the topics or issues that businesses face. And there are a lot of new issues that continuously emerge in new day and age. Just to mention a few examples, a lot of issues within the technology, electronic commerce, GMO, genetically modified foods, dealing with undocumented workers in the economy, the use of cell phone while driving, and there will be a lot of new laws, such as recently I just opened the Wall Street Journal and saw a headline that Amazon actually had an approval from the U.S. government to try the fleet of drone deliveries, along with Google and several other companies. So they are on testing mode, and there's still several ways far from their using them for deliveries, but there still be a lot of issues how to regulate a lot of drones flying out and delivering the goods. They don't have those laws in the U.S. We don't have those laws here in Russian books, and there are no laws like that in Europe. Yeah, their technology go ahead than the laws and regulations. So the laws cannot possibly address all the topics, and the topics developing quicker than laws can catch up. So therefore, the law often lags behind. And behind not only development in economy and technology, but more recent interpretations of what is considered an appropriate behavior. For example, this technology permits more precise measurements of environmental contaminations like air pollution and water pollution. And the laws are based on measures that are made by special equipment. And so the equipment becomes obsolete and the measurements become updated, not frequently updated, that the laws really cannot catch up with those equipment development and technology and obsolete measurements. So that's a second reason. And the third reason the laws are inadequate, that the laws are made by the lawmakers, the people, and laws therefore often reflect the personal interests and political motivations of the legislators rather than an appropriate ethical justification that the society expects. And because laws are essential but not sufficient, ethical responsibilities are needed to embrace those activities, those standards, and those practices that are expected or sometimes prohibited by the society, even though they are not codified into the law. So ethical responsibilities include the full scope of norms, standards, values, and expectations that reflect what consumers, employees, shareholders, and the community in general regard as fair, as just, as consistent with respect to shareholders' moral rights. So, of course, the moral and ethics are not included in the laws and regulations. So, historically, changes in the public's concept of ethics or values perceived the establishment of new laws, and they actually become the driving force behind the initial creation of laws and regulations. For example, the environmental and consumer movements was activated in the United States in 1960s, and it reflects the basic changes in the societal values and were leading to later legislation. So at this time, United States was pioneer in developing environmental and consumer laws. Then kind of the back was passed to the European Union, but it all started in 1960 when there was a lot of European environmental pollution. And a lot of lawsuits actually led to developing of new legislation. Ethical responsibilities may also reflect high standards of performance than previously or currently required by law. So in this sense, ethical responsibilities are continually rising and expanding. And so business is expected to respond to newly emerging concept of what does constitute ethical practices. One example might be some stores that are selling only those foods that they consider organic and free from GMOs, genetically modified organisms. These practices are not required by law, but many consumers expect companies today to engage in these practices. Also, ethics issues in the global arena have multiplied in recent years. We'll talk about it a little bit later. One example is electronic waste. Countries like United States or countries in the European Union are the largest producers of electronic waste, which is obsolete equipment, sometimes broken, sometimes simply morally obsolete. This equipment actually moved or shipped to poor countries or south of the world, or poor countries, poor areas in China and Africa, with all the environmental burden and public health burden pushed from the countries where the equipment is used to countries where the equipment is processed. It's a global ethical issue. And finally, there are businesses' voluntary, this discretionary or philanthropic responsibility. Though they are not really responsibility, as we're talking about, they are voluntary. They are not really responsibility in the literal sense of the word. But these are perceived as responsibilities because they reflect current expectations of business by the public. So it depends on business's desire, whether they engage in social activities that are not mandated, not required by law, and not generally expected in this ethical sense. Nevertheless, the public has an expectation that business will give back. You may hear these words, give back, that's philanthropy. And so this category has become a part of this implied social contract between business and society. So these activities might include corporate giving, product and service donations, giving money to High School of Economics for scholarships, community development, planting trees around, and other kinds of voluntary use of organization resources and its employees, these communities, and other stakeholders. So, just going back to this table, it puts economic and legal responsibility together with ethical and philanthropic, and put kind of in one whole view. And so, in summary, total social responsibility of business entails the concurrent fulfillment of the firm's economic, legal, ethical, and philanthropical responsibilities. Concurrent means simultaneously at the same time. So this is illustrated in this equation. Economic responsibilities plus legal plus ethical plus philanthropical responsibilities, total corporate social responsibilities. Although this is not really an equation because we have no idea what the weight of each in this equation is, and we'll discuss later in the course how loose this is, and it depends what companies decide, and with all kind of different contexts, we'll discuss all different 4 parts. But overall, we can say that in more practical and managerial terms, the socially responsible firm should strive to make a profit, obey the law, be ethical, and be a good corporate citizen. So that's a stakeholder perspective that we'll be trying to develop later. But overall, just to remember and understand that would be a good way to keep referring to this model when you ask questions about this corporate social responsibility and its components. So what do the companies have to do to be seen as socially responsible? So we're not just talking about it. There are a lot of people are engaged in researching what it is. They ask community members. They research public opinion. They ask business leaders, what do you think that is? What do you think should companies do? And so research of public opinion shows that the general public, it's how the public sees companies as socially responsible. This is what they expect from the company. At least these 20 activities, all characteristics from the companies. Most of these activities are representative of the legal and ethical and philosophical components of 4-part definition that we described. Now, people think corporate social responsibility factors impact a company's reputation just as do traditional business factors such as quality, service, and price. So if you look at those activities on the slide, they are pretty important. People expect the companies deliver products that are safe, that company does not pollute environment, that obeys the law in all aspects of business, that it promotes ethical and honest behavior, it commits to a safe workplace and workplace ethics, it is truthful in advertising, it doesn't have any discrimination, uses a lot of environmentally friendly packaging or try to develop new packaging, protects employees from sexual harassment, and responds quickly to customer concerns and so on. So out of all these activities that we now all expect, and a lot of times we see this is a normal and necessary components of companies who are good, who are responsible, social responsible companies. When citizens ask, so those are when they ask, what do you think the responsible companies are? The responsible activities of companies are. When they are asked about an impact of socially irresponsible behavior on firm's reputation, there are a lot of research that shows that ethical and law-abiding companies, they reap rewards from corporate social responsibility activities and enjoy enhanced reputation. So the companies that are perceived to be unethical, non-law-abiding, they're only perceived, maybe not even doing anything bad, but they have this negative public media coverage. They're only perceived by unethical. They already have a lot of penalties. And then no matter what they're trying to do in the corporate social responsibility activity, they cannot catch up to improve their image. In other words, the penalties for disobeying the laws or being irresponsible are much greater than the rewards. So if you stain your reputation, in other words, it is very difficult to clean it after, even if you try to engage in those 20 activities. So I want to stop now and see if you have questions, comments. So if you want to, if you have questions, you can talk. I think I unmuted all of you, or send me a text. Otherwise we will just continue. All right. So, we talked about what that is, corporate social responsibility, and we have this perception that it's a good thing. But in an effort to provide this balanced view of corporate social responsibility, let's just consider arguments that are raised against. Not everybody agrees with that it needs to be a part of business. So let's consider the arguments against that are traditionally being raised against and for it. Because when you talk about it, when you discuss issues that we'll be doing in seminars, you don't just say, I think it's a good thing, or I think it's a bad thing. You need to argue why. So the classical economic school of thought holds that management has one and only one responsibility, which is to maximize shareholder wealth. So this economic school argues that social issues are not the concern of business people. The social problems should be resolved by the workings of the free market system. Remember, laissez-faire, don't get involved. We have nothing to do with social problems. And if the free market cannot solve the social problems, then it falls upon the government and legislation to do their job. Today, very few people in business world actually resist corporate social responsibility on this ground of classical economic theory. Another objection is that managers are actually oriented toward finance and operations, and they do not have the necessary expertise. They're not equipped with social skills. They can't make social decisions. Although this may have been true at one point in time, it's less true today because corporate social responsibility is now becoming compulsory in business schools, what you're doing is taking this course which is compulsory for you. So at the end of this course, you can see the importance and why it is necessary for the business to get involved in corporate social responsibility. So managers are not only oriented toward finance operation, they will also have to have this kind of education. So the corporate social responsibility is incorporated in executive education as well. And it is integrated into corporate strategic decision making. And a third issue is closely related to businesses not equipped. I just mentioned, people say if managers were to pursue this corporate social responsibility very actively, it would tend to dilute business primary purpose. In other words, corporate social responsibility would put business into another field. They're not related to business's proper aim. But more and more entrepreneurs see the decision to pursue social goals as an actually desirable choice, not a dilution of business. So there's another argument against corporate social responsibility that business already have enough power. They have economic power, they have environmental, political, technological power. And so why place in their hands an opportunity to have additional social power? There's too much power already. So this view kind of tends to ignore the potential use of business social power for public good. Yet this power can and should be used for the public good and is using for public good. And also another argument is that if you encourage business to assume these social responsibilities, business might be placed in this very vulnerable position in terms of global competition. So one consequence of being socially responsible that business must internalize costs, absorb the costs that is formerly used to be passed on a society in this form of dirty air, unsafe products, and so on. So the increase in the cost of products caused by inclusion of this social or environmental consideration in the price structure might actually lead to increasing price of the product. So therefore, it will make them less competitive in international market, and especially for companies who in the countries which are required company to be social responsible, and on the global market, probably other countries, they do not have that kind of requirements. So this used to be a prominent argument against corporate social responsibility, but it becomes weaker now when we consider the reality of today. Social responsibility is becoming widespread globally. So today firms must be socially responsible to be competitive, because most countries now expect it. You can't now go be a European country and go to Africa and behave yourself responsibly. You will be responsible not only nationally in these countries' stage, but on the global stage. So in summary, some of these objections might have had more validity at one point in time, and they actually continue to be raised by some critics. I've met colleagues here who think that corporate social responsibility is pure nonsense, and they should not even be included in the education. So you will see they've been raised, and I will be interested to see your arguments and seminars about it. So most of them actually, I hope I showed you that most of them do not carry much weight in today's environment. Let's move on to arguments in support. We discuss arguments against, and we want to be able to argue why we think that corporate social responsibilities are important. There is this view called self-interest view. Sometimes it's called enlightened self-interest. If businesses wants to have a healthy climate in which it wants to operate in the future, it should take action now to ensure its long-term sustainability. So it's a part of a long-term strategy. The reasoning behind this is that society actually expects that if business does not respond to its own initiative, its role in society will be changed from outside. For example, government regulations. In other words, it is more advantageous to do the things on your own terms than wait when the government enacts a law that you don't know how to deal with it. For managers who often have a short-term orientation, it is sometimes difficult to appreciate that their rights and roles in economic systems are actually determined by society. So this concern for the long-term viability of business and society is the primary driver in the current emphasis of sustainability, but it requires really a long-term thinking. So this is why the sustainability, long-term thinking, is actually part of concept of sustainability, and that's why, as I said earlier, sustainability has become a synonym for corporate social responsibility. So one of the most practical reasons for business to be socially responsible is to ward off government intervention and regulation. Because today, if business is not actually self-regulates in many areas, the government actually will intervene with an expensive regulatory apparatus to fill this void left by the business. So that is the answer to why business invests in self-compliance. This is why. If business places itself with self-discipline standards and guidelines, future government interventions can be somewhat prevented. So warding off government regulation, it pays to self-regulate than to wait for government intervention and then deal with it. There are two additional arguments. The business has the resource and let the business try. So this is just how they call it. Business has the resource and let the business try. So because business has a resource of management talent, functional expertise, a resource of capital, and because so many actors have tried and failed to solve societal problems, like if government tried and failed, if non-government organization tried and felt business should be given a chance to do good as well. So these arguments are pretty important because there are some social problems that best can be handled only by business. For example, creating a fair workplace, providing safe products, or engaging in fair and true advertising. And another argument supporting that corporate social responsibility is that proaction is better than reaction. Proacting means anticipating and initiating. Proacting is more practical and less costly than simply reacting to problems that have already occurred. A good example is environmental pollution. It would be wiser and more cost-effective to prevent environmental deterioration in the first place than working on cleaning up polluted rivers and lakes that have been neglected for decades. Proaction is a basic idea that actually underlies the notion of sustainable development. First example in Russia is a oil spill that happened in Norilsk Nickel. So it remains to be seen what was the reason, but it appeared so far from the information that we can garner from the media that they didn't invest into the maintenance of the equipment. So it would have been actually better for them to be proactive in keeping up with the up-to-date equipment than now doing with all this cleaning up, and not just doing with, but there will be a whole range of issues with the community and the environment. So in addition, simply reacting rather than proacting actually puts business in this crisis management mode. When you're in a crisis mode, it's actually a substantial obstacle for effective management and affecting decision making. Okay, so we just discussed pros and cons of corporate social responsibility, not just pros and cons, but the argument that support views for and against. Now I want to talk a little bit about business response to calls for the corporate social responsibility, and what is the business case. So how the business case is made for the corporate social responsibility. Most businesses today, they actually do consider pros and cons, and they do embrace the idea. But the business case for the corporate social responsibility is becoming very important. So because business case means reasons why the business believes that corporate social responsibility actually brings benefits or a lot of advantages to the organization. In this line of thinking, corporate social responsibility directly benefits the bottom line of the company. Companies know that if they want to become more competitive, they have to invest in corporate social responsibility as part of their business strategy. Corporations respond in 4 main ways to this corporate social responsibility pressures. And these approaches form this sort of combined business case. One is a defensive approach, which is designed to alleviate negative consequences. Companies will do whatever they have to do to avoid pressure, to make them incur additional costs related to corporate social responsibility. Another is cost-benefit approach. The firms actually undertake those activities if they identify direct benefits that actually exceed costs. They do cost-benefit analysis, and if these activities have benefit that outweigh the cost, they will participate in them. And if they don't, they will not do any corporate social responsibility activities. That's a cost-benefit approach. A strategic approach is where firms recognize the changing environment and engage with the corporate social responsibility as a part of a deliberate corporate strategy, which we see more and more in a large corporation and multinational corporation. And in an innovation and a learning approach, the companies actually actively engage with corporate social responsibility because it provides them new opportunities to understand the new marketplace, to provide this innovation product, new services, and they actually improve organizational learning. And all that leads to competitive advantage. The companies may have different reasons why they pursue a corporate social responsibility strategy, but these approaches build a strong business rationale for the pursuit of social responsible business. I would be interested to see if you have maybe come up with more additional approaches to have this business case built for being involved in corporate social responsibility. So people in management or in business are interested what the evidence, is there evidence-based support for the business case for corporate social responsibility? There are a lot of studies, and one recent study in the Harvard Business School has actually showed that the corporate social responsibility initiatives improved companies' social standing and created solutions to social and environmental problems, and the business impacts included increased revenues and reduced costs. There are studies that actually are able to show the link, kind of underscore this business case. And let's finish on this example of the social responsible shoe company. I hope you know this these shoes, which are Tom's Shoes Company, which was founded by this guy called Blake Mycoskie in 2006. He actually was traveling and visiting Argentina, and he bought shoes called alpargatas. Alpargatas, these shoes are typically worn by Argentinian farmers, but they are like this resilient canvas slip-ons. So he bought the shoes and he was visiting some poor villages and noticed that many residents, they had even those are very light and not expensive shoes, but many residents didn't even have shoes at all. So his idea was to start a shoe company and made of this design of alpargatas and give away a pair of shoes to some needy kid or person for every shoe the company sold. So this became the basic mission of his company. Initially, he had to kind of self-finance his company, and he decided to name it Tom's Shoes for Tomorrow. And then in the summer, so the visit was in 2006, and the same year he actually already designed and unveiled his first collection of Tom's shoes, and by fall the same year he already was able to sell 10,000 pairs of shoes. And he went to Argentinian countryside with several volunteers and gave away 10,000 pairs of shoes. So there was an article in Times magazine where he said, I always thought that I will spend my first time of my life making money, and the second half of my life giving it away. And I never thought that I could do both at the same time. Yeah, so next year in February, his company had orders already from 300 stores, for over 40,000 of his summer and spring collection shoes. It's not trivial. It's a great success. So you see how the world responded to this idea. And he opened internationally, entered markets in Japan, Australia, Canada, France, Spain at the same year. So then in 6 years, they already launched another idea with the eyewear line and adopted slogan 1 for 1. So if you purchase a pair of glasses from them, they will give glasses to a person in need. So, and they already about 5 years ago, they given away about 50 million shoes. So, all the same year, they announced that they created a fund to support social good startups. So you see that's an interesting example where all this thing that we discussed are put together. He was able to make money, but at the same time he gave away. So this is ethical and philanthropic behavior. But if you recall, four-part definition of corporate social responsibility that we discussed, well, let's think about how we would assess his Tom's corporate social responsibility. It seemed that the company, let's just move back a little bit. Economic, legal, ethical. It seems that the company is more of an ethical and philanthropic model. So he started from this ethical and philanthropic model ideas and not from the base of economic and legal. Okay, I'm going to make this money and maybe I will give away more shoes and this will help me make more money. It was the other way around. So the seminars will discuss more examples of the companies. And here we have a little bit more time to discuss greenwashing. You probably heard about greenwashing or whitewashing, but it's important to point out that not all companies that actually promote the corporate social responsibility images are actually serious about being responsible to those who are involved. Some companies are trying to convey this image of responsibility when in fact they are doing not really good things. They're focusing on their own profits with actually superficial attention to responsible business practices. So the greenwashing happens when companies are intentionally seeking to convey this image of social responsible form. However, the evidence of their practices does not support this conclusion. They can do this, companies can do this in a variety of ways. They can actually make claims without any supporting evidence. They can use misleading labeling, or companies can promote this relatively unimportant but visible initiative while they have an overall record of acting very irresponsibly behind the scenes. So here we can use so-called duck test. There is a saying, if it quacks like a duck and it walks like a duck, it's a duck. So these companies do the talk, but they don't walk the walk. So it's very important to see if the company promotes and does something, and shows something, to see what they really do. To apply the duck test to see if these companies are not engaged in greenwashing. Some critics might accuse this auto giant, well known and respected Volkswagen, of a form of corporate social responsibility greenwashing. Volkswagen actually a very strongly promoted this company as a progressive, inclusive, this caring corporation. But at the same time, it was engaged in a massive deception. They falsified emission data in its vehicles. They installed software in their cars, computers, that actually hid the amount of nitrogen oxide and emission and reduced the amount of emission when cars were undergoing the emission testing. So as we think about Volkswagen, we can see that in our later discussion of business ethics, even companies that have strong image or strong programs of corporate social responsibility, very strong image, very strong presence in global arena, and they were spending millions on corporate social responsibility initiatives. companies like that can still engage in very questionable practices. In this particular case, that was very big scandal. So these companies may not actually intentionally engaged in a corporate social responsibility greenwashing, but that was an ethical mistake. An ethical mistake like that can ruin years and years in reputation and capital that, in this case, Volkswagen had. So we can actually reach the conclusion concerning corporate social responsibility and sustainability that in order to truly understand companies' motives and strategies, they have to carefully analyze the consistency of their practices and policies with the stated missions and aspirations. Because a lot of times you open the web page of the companies, you see this great mission, described a lot of aspirations, nice pictures and images, but there are no 100% actually pure socially responsible companies, but some do better than the others. And in any case, we need to carefully examine the practices and claims beyond the home web page to understand that they are not engaged in the greenwashing. So we need to watch carefully if companies start parading their virtues, and if their internal standards or other practices may not be consistent with the image that they're seeking. So most of the time, one spoon of a bad behavior indication of a lot of other unethical or not corporate responsible behavior. So let's just stop here, and this is will be the beginning of our next lecture. We will see if you have questions or comments, and meanwhile I'll show you at the end of each presentation you will find learning objectives or review topics. So this would be useful for you to make sure you can answer all of them, because you'll be responsible for them. As I mentioned, you'll be responsible for them on your exams. And if there's something that wasn't clear, you didn't understand, I wasn't talking clearly or went too fast, we'll clear that up in seminars. And of course, I encourage you to contact me and just simply use my corporate email, and I'll be happy to answer all your questions. In addition to learning objectives here, I will include also review questions. Those will be the questions indicative to your to what you might see on the exams, and also discussion questions. So in this way, the presentation will be like a package for you, where you see all the materials, and then you will see the guidelines for preparation for exams. So this way, I didn't want to send you different files and different documents. The only thing that I will add then a little points for readings, but the readings are preferable for you to be done before the seminar, so you're prepared for discussion. So let's see if you have questions. Just give me a feedback if you could hear me well. If you let's see. Will the video the lectures of all, certainly I will upload the video, and you'll be able to refer to the video anytime you want. Somebody's trying to spam our lecture, but I don't have time for that. And you're from business informatics, and your business informatics majors, right? So you're used to it, probably. So yeah, other than recording will be available, I will give you slides and too bad we can't see each other, but I'm looking forward to meeting you at seminars. Remember, you need to bring your masks. And I understand that it's hard to communicate with masks in foreign language, but we'll do our best. Otherwise, we'll just thank you for coming, all of you, and we'll see you next Tuesday. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.